This is Just in Case of American Newscape, joining our friend and mentor, Joyce Rockwood, for some thoughts on how she teaches healing from the inside out. Joyce joins us to share another natural health solution. Today, another glimpse at colon health and happiness. Hello, Joyce. Welcome back to American Newscape.
Hey, Justin, how's it going?
Things are good. Getting right to it, please enlighten us. What exactly is a colonic? In our last video, we talked about constipation, and I thought it would be helpful for our listeners who may be suffering with this to know how you work with your clients when constipation has been a long-term issue. And since you're a colon hydrotherapist, what can you tell us about colonic hydrotherapy?
Well, first of all, and hopefully if you've been watching these videos, anyone else out there also knows that I believe that you can heal your body naturally, but I also believe that gut health and detoxification are the two most powerful yet overlooked aspects of creating long-term healing in your body from the inside out. And so, what I've come to understand and know after doing over 20,000 of these colon hydrotherapy treatments,
Wow.
working clinically with my clients in New York and LA, is that colon hydrotherapy is probably what I like to call, for most people, the missing link to human health. And more specifically, a colon hydrotherapy treatment is a bath for your colon. It's a way of alleviating and washing out unwanted matter, accumulation, fecal matter, pathogens, bacteria that are unnecessary, that are causing digestive malaise, causing inflammatory responses in the body, you name it, headaches, skin issues, weight gain, poor sleep, gas, burping of all kinds, poor immune system and respiratory response, things that you might not necessarily think are linked to gut health, but are now scientifically linked, like infertility and mental and emotional health and well-being. Anything that is going on in your body can be that's causing some kind of negative or adverse health effect is typically linked to gut health. 70% of most diseases are. And anything that is causing any kind of interference with a higher quality of life can typically be addressed by focusing on gut health and implementing colon hydrotherapy treatments. So, to answer your question, a colon hydrotherapy treatment is a washing out of accumulated waste and matter from the large intestine in a therapeutic format, which we'll talk about, to release unwanted poisons that are burdening the body.
Of course, you're talking about infertility. That not only affects women, it affects men too. I mean, it's the health of trying to reproduce.
Hello. Yes.
Hello, yeah.
So, exactly. And, in the last 25 years of doing this work, I've worked with both male and female clients and who have come sometimes suffering with, fertility issues, whether it's a hormonal imbalance, prostate issues, being able to have a child, going through difficulty through menopause. So, what we know about the gut, just to kind of connect those two things together for anyone out there who's listening and is feeling a little bit confused, is that, your gut is managing many aspects of your well-being, metabolic response, and also your hormonal response. So that definitely relates to your fertility.
Okay. You talk about colonic hydrotherapy. There are different methods, correct?
Yes, there are. And this is a question that comes up rather often because people start researching and going online and talking to friends, and then they get a little confused. So I would just say, you want to go also, I would really advise people who are watching this, people start typing stuff on the internet once they watch an interview. If you really want to get great and valid information, go to the source. Don't go to bloggers who are just writing about these things who've never had a colonic, right? This is not a knowledgeable database of information. We really want to go to people who are doing the work, who are very skilled and knowledgeable and experienced in performing these therapies to get information that is valid. So here's the thing. There's two different types of treatments. The first type is a machine-based treatment, And the second type is a gravity-based colon hydrotherapy treatment. And I'm not here to bash one or the other, but I will say that I perform gravity-based colon hydrotherapy treatments, and I highly recommend my clients and even people just calling me for consultations that they always seek out a gravity-based therapist. And the reason for that is because it is the original form of the work. And I'll explain the difference between the two so that people can understand why I would recommend one over the other. There's a machine that sometimes administers these treatments. And the reason I don't recommend the machine method, and it doesn't mean that you can't have a good or a decent session with a machine method. It's just that with a machine method, there's a bunch of things happening that I personally don't agree with, and that I also know aren't going to administer the highest quality experience. So first of all, a machine method treatment means that there is a box on the wall that is forcing through mechanical means the water into the large intestine. And there is a separate device that is suctioning it out, or a second mode of the machine that is suctioning the water out. And right then and there, anyone listening to this might even be ready to turn off this interview, because that just sounds really freaky and scary and unfavorable. So, this work dates back to the Essene Gospel of Peace thousands of years. They didn't have machines administering these treatments. And so the original method of this work was through a gravity-based system where they were literally hollowing out a gourd and hanging it from a tree with a reed. And so with the machine-based treatment, there's a forcing of water in and a pulling of it out, and it does override the natural instinct of the large intestine. And what it typically does when water is administered is create a peristaltic response, which is that wave-like motion to release the water. So I'm not a big fan of the machine-based methods. Have I had clients who've gone on a vacation or taken a business trip and wanted to get a treatment, and that was the only thing available? And did they have a great session? Yeah. Have I known a lot of people who've had machine-based treatments and have had mediocre or unfavorable sessions? Yeah. So let me just say this. Again, not to bash machine-based method. It's just, in my opinion, not the most reliable or the safest approach to getting the treatments. Now, when we work with gravity-based sessions, we are working with a much more natural approach. There is a 5-gallon tank of water. Don't worry, we don't put all that water in the body at once. There's a 5-gallon tank of water above the body, and there is a therapist in the room the entire time administering the session, doing a lot of hands-on work, pulsing the tube that carries the water out of the body. We're allowing the water into the body simply through the means of gravity, which is why that 5-gallon tank is 3 feet above in suspension of the body. And then the water that leaves the body and the waste that leaves the body leaves through a separate tube than the tube that carries the water in. And that tubing is below the body. It's obviously attached to the instrument that goes in the body, which we'll talk about in a moment, but it carries the water out of the body through a plumbing system that is below the body. So right there, you start to see visually tank above the body, if this is the body here, water going in, and then the waste going down. And so you can understand that there's a flow, water in from the height, water out of the body through also the height of the body, and the transition to the plumbing below it. And so what's happening when you administer the water to the body in that moment is the natural instinct of the intestine, the large intestine, the colon, is prompted. And when that mechanism of peristalsis is prompted, we are strengthening the organ. We are alleviating matter that the body does not need or want, that is also causing a lot of digestive malaise and other types of problems, which we talked about earlier. And there's an immediate sense of relief and to the system. And over time, the colon becomes stronger. And no, there's no sense of the body becoming reliant on these things. So just to cap it up, the difference between the two treatments is that the machine method is a little bit more newfangled. It has gauges, there's pressure engaged. With the gravity method, we are only using a natural means of pressure, which is the height of the tank. We're prompting the organ naturally through the input of the water. The colon, the large intestine, the client in this case, is really in control of the session, even though it's an involuntary response, so that that water and that gas and waste that's leaving their body is happening through the peristaltic motion, not through a suctioning of the matter out of their body. It's a much more comfortable process. It's a much more result driven process. And I can tell you that in the last 25 years of doing this work, I have had many clients come to me who've had machine-based methods, treatments, machine-based method treatments for years. And after having one session with me, were amazed at the difference. So I've worked with people who've had a lot of experience with machine-based, and I've also worked with clients who've had minimal and still felt that the gravity method, and it's not about me and my ego, this is just about an approach and a procedure, have felt that the gravity-based sessions that they've received were much more magnanimous in terms of what left their body and the results that they got over time. And I'll leave it at that.
Well, as a non-colonic therapist and knowing very little about it, it almost sounds like a bunch of businessmen sat in the back room smoking cigars, wondering how they could do this process faster and more efficiently and put less hands on and less people in the room to keep an eye on their clients. But that would just be one theory. I think, in growing up as a child, many, 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 many years or decades ago, our mothers had what was called an enema bag that had a hanger on it that was designed to attach to a shower wall, and that was our first experience. And
Yep, that's it.
that was actually an effective means of doing it. And
Yep.
our mothers were there making sure that we were okay. So
Yeah, and I don't want to say that if you're having a machine-based treatment, I should just course correct that you're not receiving some level of hands-on care from a therapist in the room. But there are actually some types of treatments where there's no one in the room. They just kind of leave you there, and there's that. But that's not what I was necessarily talking about. But there's just less engagement with the therapist because the machine is really overriding the body, the client's body in that sense. When I work with clients, I'm very hands-on. It's almost like, you're playing the violin. You need two hands for the most part. Look, there are exceptions to that. Of course, we see on like America's Got Talent. God bless these individuals. But ideally, you have one hand, the left hand of the therapist is doing the abdominal massage. The right hand of the therapist is rhythmically pulsing the tube carrying the water and waste out of the client's body. And there's a cadence and a communication that's happening between my two hands. And there's an energy transference. I don't want to sound airy-fairy, but there really is a spiritual aspect to doing this work. And we'll talk more about that, as we go further into, this particular conversation, but also in future conversations. It's just that in my experience, a gravity-based session is, again, a much more thorough hands-on experience, not only for the therapist, but of course for the client.
well, what I would add when you talk about true therapy or physical therapy or massage therapy from a therapist, if you notice the really talented, gifted therapists, their hands never leave your body. There's always a hand on your body. They're always with you. They're always checking with you, not verbally necessarily, but they're checking for signals. So that I do have
That's
experience with.
Yeah, and that's a very poignant perception to point out as someone who also does body work, that there's like a dance-like nature to the massage session. And as you say, massage session, as you say, keeping one hand at some point always on the body and never just pulling off completely, because even though there's not, as you said, that verbal communication, there's a different energy communication going on between those two people. So
And
thank you for pointing that out.
if you want it to work, that's what you need. You need that
Yeah.
connection.
Yeah.
Was that hairy fairy? What was that terminology? That technical
Airy
terminology?
fairy.
Hairy fairy. Okay. Joyce, how is the gravity-based treatment administered?
So the gravity-based colon hydrotherapy treatment is administered in a colon hydrotherapy treatment room, which sounds redundant, but it's a special room where there's typically and ideally a toilet, of course, and there's a massage table set up and a 5-gallon tank of water affixed on the wall above the body by about 3 feet. And the client is undressed from waist down, lying on the table, typically on their left side to start the session. And the reason for that is because the descending colon is on the left side of the body. So if they're lying on their left side, which I hope I just said, and if not, I'm course correcting, lying on their left side, then it's easy to evacuate the left side of the body first. And then from the body, I'm going to show the instrument in a moment that we used to do the session. There's also a waste tube that gets attached to a plumbing line that goes directly into the sewage. All right, so let me just back up for a second. So if we have a 5-gallon tank of water that gets filtered, that's affixed to the wall, from that tank leaves a narrow surgical tube that gets attached to this instrument, which is called a speculum, okay? Its bark looks much worse than its bite. So we attach the narrow tube to this L-shaped appendage that comes off of the speculum. It is a stainless steel instrument. It is seriously sterilized after every single treatment, to answer most people's initial concern. So we attach that feed-in tube of fresh filtered water to the top. You'll notice that that feed-in tube is very narrow. The front of the instrument is going to get lubricated and, keyword, gently inserted into the rectum. Now, this is important. This disc that you see here is called a hilt. It prevents the instrument from going any further into the rectum than this distance, which is actually not so long once you remove the middle piece, whose function is solely for insertion, which is why it's tapered, okay? So once this tip is gently inserted into the body, and that takes literally about 3 whole seconds, it's not painful at all, we remove that middle piece, okay? Then we attach to this wider part of the speculum the waistline. Notice how wide this is? That means the emphasis of the entire treatment, for the most part, and I'll explain in a moment, is on the release of water, waste, and gas from the client's body. I'll say that again. The emphasis of the majority of the treatment is on the release of the matter, gas and waste and the water from the body. So here's the thing. There's a valve on the feed-in tube that the therapist will unclip or open. It allows the water to start flowing gently into the body. It's a very gentle flow. However, the results are quite phenomenal. So the water flows into the body through the narrow tube. It enters into the colon, and then it simultaneously exits. So once it's going in, it's simultaneously moving out. 2 separate tubes, 2 separate actions, okay? The therapist's job and the client's job is to just relax and chill out and chat, ask questions, comment on how you're feeling, or just bliss out and not talk at all. It's whatever the client wishes. The therapist's job is to be tuned in to the rhythm of the body, gently pulsing the water and the waste and the gas that's coming out of the body through that waistline tube. It's a very gentle flow. It's a very gentle pulsing of the tube. The reason we pulse the tube is to continue that extra flow, to make sure that it's really emphasizing that exit. Now, earlier on, I'm going to put this down. Earlier on a moment ago, and I said the majority of the session, the emphasis is on the outflow. There will be certain points of the treatment where the body is not releasing gas or waste. And in those periods of time, the therapist will do what we call a retention of water. When we do the retention of water, we will close off the waistline, allow the fresh water to move into the body alone without exiting for a few seconds or longer. We do that with the knowledge of the client, of course. We get them to breathe a little bit more routinely and deeply. And the second that that client feels that there's a little sensation of discomfort where they need to release that water, they let the therapist know, and we open the waistline, and immediately flows the water, waste, and gas out of their body. Now, we do that because there is a need to hydrate that large intestine a little bit more thoroughly once the descending portion of the colon has alleviated the majority of waste that it can in that moment. And we do those retentions to support a deeper level of cleansing of the organ. We never do retentions and walk out of the room, okay? We are very present. The client is present. There's always a communication going on between the two individuals. And so sometimes clients can take very long retentions. They might have, an oversized organ, an oversized colon. We call that megacolon. But we want to be very in tune with the body. We want to be very connected to the client. Sometimes clients take very brief retentions of water. There's no judgment around that. The point is that we're doing it to support the body in releasing more matter. And that is really the only goal. So there's no competition around how much water you hold or anything like that. And even if you're doing enemas at home, if you're watching this interview and you're curious, some people can do an enema and take in like a whole bag of water or 32 ounces of water, especially after they've released significantly a few rounds of water going in and out of the body and sitting on the toilet. But there are some people that might do enemas at home that might be watching this and only can take in like a few seconds or more of water, and that's okay. And that might tell us a few different things, which, if you are curious to learn more, you can always reach out to me and we can have a conversation around that. But with a colonic, we're not putting water in and then sitting on the toilet like you do an enema at home. With a colonic professionally administered treatment, we are allowing the water in. It is leaving the body at the same time with the waste and the gas. And it's a much more efficient way of doing an enema that you might do at home, which is fine, but this is more efficient. There's not as much back and forth. There's no pushing during a colonic. So it's not really creating some of that irritation that a lot of people experience when they do enemas at home with their rectum. And so this is a really wonderful way to support the body in experiencing whole body wellness.
Wow. So what can we anticipate? I mean, how are we going to feel after the treatment?
Superman. Superwoman.
Yeah, I like that.
Who doesn't want to feel like their own superhero? It's funny because a lot of people always ask that question and they emphasize the word after. But what I've come to see with my clients over the course of so many years is it's not really just how you are going to feel after the session, but I like to let you know how you're going to actually feel as well during the session. There is typically, in my experience, about 20 minutes into the session, a majority of people that I work with will say something to me along these lines. Now, they'll come in kind of nervous, granted, because it's their first time, and aren't we nervous doing just about anything in our lives for the first time, whether it's, rollerblading or like skiing or it may be. But after that first time, we feel a little bit more connected and a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more like we can show the next person what to do. Within the first 20 minutes of a colonic, most of my clients will turn to me and say, that's interesting. I feel really relaxed. Some people will turn to me and say, I just remembered where I put my retainer from 3rd grade. What I mean by that is, our sense of awareness and our mental acuity senses do come alive when we release unwanted waste from the body, because there's an oxygen surge that goes throughout all of the vessels. And this is important because your system's going to respond, your interstitial tissue respond, your brain function definitely respond, your sense of smell is going on. So I'll talk about the after effects after the treatment in a moment, but I really do want to address that there is an immediate effect on your body when you take out the garbage. And that's literally what we're doing. I mean, if you had a really bad cold and your sinuses were fully congested with really thick yellow or even green mucus, and you blew your nose and it took like 3 tissues to get all this stuff evacuating out of your sinuses, I mean, it feels amazing to blow those rubber bands out of your nostrils. I mean, I don't know anyone who says they want to put that stuff back in. Do you?
I do not, and it does.
And so if you can imagine in a 45 to 60 minute period of time, alleviating the equivalent of, 8 to 12 movements of, fecal matter from your body, how are you going to feel? Well, you're going to get off that colonic table. You are going to feel lighter, more energized, unstoppable, open-hearted. Open-hearted. I mean, when we talk about spirituality, when you alleviate matter from your body of the physical, it always affects you emotionally. People feel calmer. They feel more peaceful. A lot of times people come up to me after their session and they say, I know this is going to sound strange, but I just want to hug you. Right. And I get so, felled. I get so welled up about this. Like, it's like, as Linda Richmond says, I get so, what's the word? Verklempt.
You do.
Because clients are really having a moment where their bodies are experiencing a brand new normal, which is just really an extraordinary experience. And so, on a physical level, you will feel a lightness of being. Your belly will feel more open. You will feel less bloated, less gassy. Sometimes it's a lower back pain alleviation. The senses. Some people say, I feel like I can see things more clearly. Headaches go away. Anxiety dispels. And I mean, your digestion improves. You have better sleep. I mean, you have more energy. You feel like you don't want to eat any more crap. Your sense of your food cravings shift. Yeah, I can't tell you how many people I've had on a colonic table will turn to me and just be like, I'm never eating pizza again. Because once that stuff flies out of you, you're just like, wow. You make the connection between feeling like literally like shit and feeling better. And if you can make that connection between letting go of stuff that your body has accumulated because you ate things that weren't really intended for human consumption, and what it would mean for your body to take in whole, unprocessed foods that are of a high vibration and how that really feeds you on all fronts, I mean, there's no greater epiphany than that. I do want to back up for a quick second because sometimes I get ahead of myself when I'm answering these questions. When you were asking what happens during a gravity-based colon hydrotherapy treatment, I wanted to just wrap up that part by saying we do start on the left side, but at some point in the session, I have the clients turn onto their back. Anyone administering the session would do the same thing. And the reason we do that is because it's going to allow the water to move around in the intestine more thoroughly to the transverse, which goes from the in the order it goes from right to left. But when we're doing the colonic, we're going from left to right. And then ideally getting the water to drop down into what's called the cecum, which is the very beginning part of the large intestine on the right side, where the small intestine and large intestine attach. And then we finish the treatment, just kind of going back to explaining how this works, by having the client turn back onto their left side so we can more thoroughly drain the water out of their body before we stop the water flow, remove the instrument, leave the room, and then they can sit privately on the toilet to release a little bit of water and or waste that might not have left when they were on the table. Typically, after the session, there is not a lot happening in terms of matter leaving the client's body, typically, meaning that the therapist was able to fully evacuate their system. Now, sometimes we work with clients who are extremely constipated. And in that case, we might even stop the session midpoint, remove the instrument, leave the room, and let them sit on the toilet to evacuate a bunch more comfortably because there's so much that needs to leave the body. And then they can get back up on that treatment table and we can continue working with them and then have them finish, like I said, by sitting on the toilet at the end. Some people throughout the rest of the day, again, their body might be like, wow, this is amazing. We've created all this space down here and it's sending like a sonar signal from the belly button all the way out, radiating to all the other aspects and parts of the body, saying like, look at this colon, look at how much emptier it is. Now you can dump your poisons down there too. And so sometimes throughout the rest of the day, some clients will experience more movements. Not typically a diarrhea response, but more movements and more activity. They'll call me up or text me after a treatment and be like, I had another huge release after I left you and I got home, or I had another huge movement. I can't even believe so much more is coming out of me, even after what came out of me in the session. I can't believe it. And it's really eye-opening for people to see what their bodies were holding on to. So eye-opening. So that's really what I wanted to wrap up by, kind of clearing up how the session ends. And then you were asking about the benefits after the treatment, which are typically ongoing, right? So as I was saying a moment ago, the treatment ends, but the colonic is really still happening because we've created so much opportunity for more evacuation to take place, which means that now over the next several days, the individual is typically sleeping better, more energy, feeling more focus and concentration, feeling a deeper connection to humanity, wanting to do better in the world, feeling like they have more time on their hands because they're not so much bogged down by worrying about their health or not feeling well. They're feeling sprite. And, I can't think of a client who I've worked with who hasn't felt all levels of spiritual, mental, physical, and emotional well-being over the course of time of working with them. So for some people, they'll focus more on the physical stuff initially, and the other things come after. And sometimes for people who are more tapped into their spirituality, those things come first. So it's, it looks a little different for each person, but over the course of time, the benefits are just one after the other after the other.
Well, yeah, and you didn't even touch on the body's ability to absorb nutrients better.
See, there's so much to talk about. I feel like we could have interview after interview.
Well, let me just quickly review what I may have picked up, and not to be an airy fairy, so to speak, but if I were to sing this, it would be, I can see clearly now, the waste is gone, right? I apologize to everybody.
Who sang that song originally? I can see clearly now.
Yeah,
rain
the
is
waste is
Who
gone.
sang that? I have to get
A talented person sang that song initially. Okay.
Yeah, but truly, that is a great point. When you have removed so much accumulation from the body that was getting in the way of absorption, the reason people have better food cravings is because they are absorbed better. They're eating more big salads, hashtag big salad before cooked food. And once you start putting more minerals and enzymes in the body that way, as well as through proper vegetable juicing, then you're satiating the cells, you're feeding the cells, and you don't need so much emotional gratification from foods that aren't serving you in the first place. So you become your own mechanism for healing. You're really your own guru, as I like to tell my clients.
Okay, Joyce. Anything else you want people listening to know about gravity-based colonic hydrotherapy?
Yeah, what I'll say is that I once met someone years ago who waited 10 years to get a colonic. I was like, oh, wow, what was holding you back? Fear. I didn't know what to expect. So ask questions, dispel your own fears. And most of my clients' biggest regret after they get their first colonic is not having it sooner. So don't wait, don't put yourself on hold, and just know that there's really nothing to be afraid of. Letting go of this stuff. It's like, sometimes we're afraid to clean our closets out. It's like, what if I need that dress? What if I need that tie? The truth is that my goal is to teach you how to properly nourish, detoxify, and heal your body naturally from the inside out, so that you can feel like and look like you are aging in reverse, because that's what I do. But helping you to experience a life of freedom where you are feeling completely independently healthy is who I am. And so on the heels of that, I just want you to know that below this video, there's an opportunity for you to get your very first colonic at a savings. I have a really great friend in LA named Chell Calderer who worked with me at the Springs, and she is brilliant, gifted, experienced, and knowledgeable. And we've set up a code for you so that you can have your very first colonic and save $25. And if you love the work, like everyone who goes to her does, you can actually have an even deeper savings by getting into her loyalty program. If you're an LA person and you're going to be around, that would be a smarter move for you, because you get saunas with her. You can get repeat treatments throughout the month at that same wonderful discount. And she is just heaven on earth. So I would recommend you check out her website. We got the links below for you. And if you're not ready for a colonic yet, is okay. I would just say, reach out to me. Let's start a conversation around what's going on with your health, and let's have a discovery call so that I can begin to help you see how easy detox is and take the next steps to get started.
Well, Joyce, I want to personally thank you. So this has been Justin Case and Joyce Rockwood sharing how colonics play a role in keeping us regular. Thanks for joining us. Remember, free gifts, additional information, and links are provided in this video's Read More. Please make sure to subscribe to this channel and joining Joyce in her journey to help get a better grasp on life.